Good evening, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Up in the Air. I'm Dakota Smith.
And I'm Meredith Fish. Dakota, I think we have a great show planned today. We have Matt Brothers and Corey Bauer from the Weather Risk Club coming to give us a different perspective on the Hurricane Sandy on this one-year anniversary.
And later on, Ryan will be joining us at the Climate Wall with the 8 to 14 day forecast in our climate outlook.
Yes, so we have a busy show planned, so let's get right to it with Update in the Air.
Recent evidence has shown that debris from the tsunami that impacted Japan a year and a half ago is still impacting the United States western coast. High radiation readings have indicated that radioactive material continues to wash up. Other indications have been several reports of mass deaths and strange illnesses in numerous animals. Although none of these events have been confirmed to be related, there is speculation that there is a link. Reports have also come in from the Alaskan shoreline of polar bears, seals, and walruses with fur loss and open sores, both indicative of radiation poisoning. Tsunami wreckage traveling from Japan has a variety of paths to travel, indicating debris may be sporadically washing up in the next few years to come.
With ocean acidification on the minds of many tropical countries, a study from the Griffith University in Australia finds one positive consequence out of the list of many negatives. This study was assessing whether the Irukandji jellyfish, which typically reside in warm tropical waters, will migrate into the southeast oceans. It was found that although the increase in ocean temperatures will provide an opportunity for the adult jellyfish to increase their range, the juvenile's development might be inhibited by the ocean acidification. This study is the first step toward assessing if these jellyfish will pose a significant threat to tourism and human health.
Large clouds of dust commonly travel off the west coast of Africa into the Caribbean and southern United States. A journal article has recently been published by the American Meteorological Society concerning these clouds of dust and their environmental impacts on the United States and Caribbean Sea. A key finding of the study was the potential health risks posed by the dust. Bacteria, viruses, and pesticides can travel in the dust clouds, bringing unknown consequences to humans and the environment. It was also found that African dust may be a contributing factor to the Caribbean coral reef decline. Pathogens contained in the dust have been proven to be harmful to coral growth. On the bright side, it was found that African dust is a key contributor to soil formation in the Bahamas and Caribbean. The dust provides various nutrients essential for the ocean food chain.
Grain futures are mixed after the Department of Agriculture reported that the harvest has accelerated from 14% to 77%, with corn and wheat conditions remaining the same. Soybeans did well this past week as exports rose by 40% to 83.6 million bushels compared to a week earlier, with this being the highest since November 2009. Corn prices were not looking so good as prices fell to a 39-month low of $4.29 per bushel after harvest accelerated last week. As for the conditions of the crop, there was a 2% increase in the crop rated good to excellent this week, while the fair and very poor to poor crops decreased by 1%. Unfavorable weather has been the main cause of the delay in fieldwork, and with future forecasts not looking good, harvesting could once again slow down.
The Center for American Progress has released an interactive map highlighting 50 cities across the United States that are taking steps to increase their resilience to extreme weather and other climate change impacts. Many actions include building seawalls, levees, restoring wetlands, improving building designs, and increased planning for public health. Here in Pennsylvania, the city of Philadelphia has begun creating a green stormwater infrastructure by expanding green spaces. This includes maintaining the city's tree canopy, as well as encouraging property owners and builders to use open space corridors and trees to reduce the impacts of the urban heat island and storm runoff. Other cities that have taken actions towards a resilient community include Phoenix, Arizona, Seattle, Washington, and Boulder, Colorado. These steps are expected to ramp up as city infrastructures become increasingly stressed.
This summer, Arctic sea ice loss was kept in check by relatively cool weather and stormy conditions. Comparing it to 2012, this past year we saw significant less ice melt in both Greenland and Antarctica. Arctic sea ice reached its annual minimum on September 13th, but has increased rapidly towards the end of the month due to autumn cooling. The average sea ice extent for September 2013 was 5.35 million square kilometers, which was 1.17 million square kilometers below the 1981 to 2010 average. Compared to previous years, This September's average sea ice extent was the 6th lowest in the satellite record. Hurricane Sandy made landfall in New Jersey 1 year ago this week. And this week's risk report, Matt Brothers and Corey Barwat are here with the Weather Risk Management Club with details on how things stand today.
So can you guys give us a general overview of the impacts of Sandy?
Thanks for having us. If you didn't know, Tuesday marked the 1 year anniversary of when Hurricane, or what some others called it, Superstorm Sandy, made landfall near Brigantine, New Jersey. This was the second costliest U.S. Atlantic hurricane with an estimated $65 billion worth in damage, only behind Hurricane Katrina. As a result, the entire eastern seaboard was on gridlock. Amtrak halted services, thousands of flights were canceled, and roadways were impassable. Storm surge in New York City flooded streets, tunnels, and subway lines, and cut power in and around the most populous city in the United States. In total, 8.1 million homes lost power due to impacts of Sandy, with locations as far away as Michigan. 305,000 houses were damaged or destroyed, and 265,300 businesses were impacted in New York alone.
So you've talked about some of the damage. Can you tell us the meteorology behind the storm?
Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland receives the storm's maximum rainfall of 15.3 inches, while 34 inches of snow was measured in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Before making landfall, the storm had a diameter of 820 miles and a near-record low barometric pressure of 27.76 inches, roughly 940 millibars. A storm surge of 13.88 feet, which was 9.15 feet above average, was recorded at the Battery in Lower Manhattan, which attributed to the major flood in New York City.
What progress has been made in the recovery efforts?
According to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, insurers have paid out almost $8 billion in repair money for Sandy-hit homeowners. The average check has been $54,754, with 92% of people who filed claims receiving at least some payment.
Also, the Small Business Administration received 14,890 business disaster loan applications. So far, the SBA has approved 4,079 business disaster loan applications for a total of $478 million.
What types of issues are people still dealing with today?
One major issue with this storm was the fact that 2.5 hours before Sandy made landfall, the storm was declared no longer tropical, but a post-tropical cyclone with hurricane-force winds. This caused many issues with insurance companies and what damages were supposed to be covered. On top of everything else, new flood hazard maps are being created by FEMA, placing more buildings in flood zones in the aftermath of what occurred during Sandy. A result of this could be an increase in payment costs for flood insurance inside the perimeter of these updated flood zones.
Can you explain why this portion of the country was particularly vulnerable to major economic impacts from a storm like Sandy?
This tropical storm hit a very highly productive area of the eastern seaboard. All 26 counties designated as a major disaster area were among the top 10% of U.S. counties in terms of labor force density. This became a huge burden for businesses, big and small, because of lost profit. About 95% of 450,000 private insurance claims were closed 6 months after Sandy, but only 23% did not send out checks to policyholders. The loss suffered by the holder either wasn't covered under the terms of the insurance policy or it did not exceed the deductible. Continuing on with flooding, Hoboken, New Jersey was vastly affected by water damage. Most of the damage associated with Sandy was either directly or indirectly caused by flooding. The problem was that many people didn't have flood insurance, and even if they did, the policy had limited amounts of coverage or there were significant restrictions on situations such as no business income coverage.
FEMA's response to significant hurricanes has been criticized in the past. Has this been the case with their response to Sandy?
Some struggles with policy limitations have repercussions as extreme as residents having to deal with returning money back to FEMA due to specific wording in their insurance coverage. In one case, a resident was granted a $37,000 check from FEMA-sponsored flood insurance following Hurricane Sandy. only before FEMA demanded $17,000 back after the agency changed its mind and decided that the resident's first floor is really a basement and not covered for flooding. Still, 1 year later, thousands of people still remain displaced from their homes, and businesses continue to struggle as they continue their fight to get full payouts from FEMA and insurance companies.
Matt and Corey, thank you very much for joining us with this week's Risk Report.
Thanks for having us, Dakota and Meredith.
And Faith and Tom will be here for next week's Weather Risk Report.
Thanks, guys. Up in the Air will be back in a moment with more right after this.
And welcome back to Up in the Air. It certainly turned much cooler here in Happy Valley, Meredith, and it certainly feels like the middle of fall.
Yes, that's right, Dakota, and it does appear the country will remain divided in terms of temperature and precipitation over the next couple of weeks.
And standing by with the details is our Ryan Brenton at the Climate Wall. Ryan, take it away.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Dakota and Meredith. We have certainly turned the corner in terms of the cooler weather here in central Pennsylvania. In fact, the average high temperature this weekend is only around 57 degrees. So even when we talk about temperatures around 60, that is considered above normal, and it's a sure sign that we are headed into the cool season and well into fall at this point as well. Another indication, want to remind you that we fall back this weekend. Set your clocks back 1 hour here before going to bed Saturday night, and that not only means an earlier sunrise, but probably more noticeably to many of you, an earlier sunset, only around 5 o'clock here on Sunday, and the earliest sunset comes around 4:45 between December 2nd and the 15th. So we have a ways to go until we start adding minutes back onto the sunlight here in Pennsylvania. The drought monitor, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and there is still a corridor here of abnormally dry conditions north of I-80 from Scranton to Williamsport to just north of State College. Similar story up around Bradford and just southwest of Erie. But one major statistic that's quite interesting for this month is that our state capital of Harrisburg, 11 inches of rain this month, making it the wettest October on record. So while some areas are being monitored for drought, other areas have seen too much rain, and that is certainly the situation down in the capital region so far this month. In terms of the 8 to 14 day outlook, this from November 6th through the 12th, we're expecting below normal precipitation through much of the southeast from the Florida Panhandle through the Delmarva Peninsula, but there's likely going to be a corridor of above normal precipitation from the Mississippi River Valley through Ohio and through Chicago, and it's possible that that extends into western Pennsylvania according to the latest projection from the Climate Prediction Center. Through the west, it's expected to be below normal here in terms of precipitation for the Four Corners, while the Pacific Northwest may be on the above normal side in terms of rainfall. Temperature-wise over the next 8 to 14 days, really for much of the eastern seaboard likely ending up either side of normal, but here in Pennsylvania probably just slightly above normal, while just to our south and west, this is really where we're expecting temperatures to be much above normal through the southeast, and quite a different story here through the western part of the nation. The whole western seaboard, the Pacific seaboard, likely going to be below normal with much below normal temperatures through Montana. That is the climate outlook for this week. We'll be back in a moment with more here on Up in the Air.
And that's going to do it for this week's edition of Up in the Air. We'd like to thank Matt and Corey from the Weather Risk Management Club for being here. 2 more students will be with us again next week.
Also, next week, we will feature a clip from the Meteorology Department's TV production class.
And as always, we will have a look at the latest news and information coming out of the weather enterprise and climate world.
Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Meredith Fish.
And I'm Dakota Smith. Join us next time, Up in the Air.